The thing that we were going to talk about today is quadratic voting, well, voting generally, how mechanism design can play into voting, NFT governance. So yeah, I think there's a few things that's been, so I've actually got a journalist who's asking me about Constitution DAO. So that turned out to be a total balls up, which I wasn't all that surprised about. It struck me as a bit of a bad idea from day one. And yeah, it panned out to be a bit of a mess. They raised $40 million with a median investment amount of $200 and did it all on Ethereum through a little ICO platform called Juicebox. And now they can't refund everyone. They didn't win the Constitution, and now they're stuck with refunding a bunch of people. So yeah, it's all a bit of a mess. I think what's happening is people are rushing into DAOs without really understanding what they are, how to run them, how to set them up, and getting themselves into a bit of a pickle because of it. So yeah, I think it's at a really interesting time, but what it's done has opened people's minds to the possibility of what's going on. So I think we're in a sort of watershed moment for DAOs where all of a sudden they've gone from being this very fringe idea in Web3 to being something that people start able to think about. Like, one of the difficult things in crypto is that it's all so new and different that people aren't able to imagine what's possible. And the good thing that happened with Constitution DAO is that it showed people what is possible. It allows you to collectivize buying power to engage in some activity, whatever it might be, and then have the responsibility of whatever happens mutually shared across a group of people. So in some ways, it was a bit like an ICO, a bit like a 2017 ICO, where people went, we're going to do this. All throw your money in this box and you get tokens in return. That's as far as they got. They didn't really think through the implications of what happens if we don't win, what happens about refunds, what happens about the token governance, what is the governance, who's responsible for what. So we're at this stage, and what I think it's done is really expose the need for governance infrastructure, which is what we do at finance.vote. We build essentially the bricks and mortar of digital institutions. Like, how do you set up an organization and have it have a greater chance of success by setting up your governance properly, by setting up your token economy properly, and thinking about the human problems that come with doing DAOs. I think we're at just this very early moment where people are almost like rushing into it without thinking it through too much, and consequently people have got themselves into a bit of a pickle with Constitution DAO. So I don't know if anyone knows what's going to happen with. I'm just trying to catch up on where they're at with it. I saw someone moaning the other day that essentially they can't do the refund. So the majority of money that went into that box was small investors, and they're stuck on the refunds, but they also didn't really understand how to do governance, if anything. So the goal was to buy something at an auction. The other problem was that DAOs are transparent. So DAOs participating in auctions doesn't really work because everyone can see the max bid before they start. So yeah, it was all a bit of a mess, that one. But nevertheless, I think it was a net good for the space. I'm actually glad that it didn't pan out. I think the thing I tweeted was, this will anger the gods. I think we're just too early for a high-profile DAO at the moment. The sort of tools for running these things aren't quite there yet. So I'm keen to see what other people think we should talk about in this 2 hours. We've got that one, where are we at with DAOs at the moment? The Constitution thing has happened. It didn't really work. What's the current state of the market and so on? So I think we should try and get like a few other people. So there's Naved, you're there as a speaker. I think we should get Chris up here.
I don't know if he's having trouble joining, or we're talking about a different Chris.
Yeah, Chris coming here. Let's see if we can get him on. There's Chris. Ksenia, I need to be made as co-host. Can you do that? So I can add some more people up. All right, who else is here? So I can see in our audience here, we've got several members of our DAO There's Yubi.
Hey, Nick, part of the problem is you can only have so many co-hosts.
But we can add
just
speakers,
trying to
right?
sort that out.
Can you hear, get involved, say hello, say hello?
Can you hear me? Hello?
I can.
All right. We are hosting. This is exactly like Clubhouse, isn't it? Is that for me?
Yeah. Chris is here. Hey, Chris.
Hey, folks. How's it going?
Not bad, man. We're getting there. So I'm slowly bringing on speakers from our DAO. For those of you listening to the background, we live in a Discord group. The kind of general DAO life is that you hang out in a Discord and try and build things. We build DAOs, so we're a DAO that builds DAOs, and we build all the apps that we think DAOs are going to need in the future. So one of the standard things that normal organizations use is something like a software suite that helps them do their day-to-day business, like the Google Apps ecosystem or Office 365, something like that. We're trying to build the Office 365/Google Apps ecosystem for DAOs. And what's different there is that they predominantly are about handling, distributing, and using digital assets for governance. So we've got everything that's needed to kickstart a token DAO. So there's several models of what I think DAOs will trend towards. One is that you have a fungible token. So everyone loves tokens at the moment. And people can essentially have a token economy, and then people use those tokens to capture value of whatever business that they get up to. And that comes down to your utility or your token economics. And that's where most of the DAOs have been up to this point. If you look at the sort of famous ones, like MakerDAO, that manages a decentralized stablecoin. Compound manages a decentralized money market, DeFi system. And they use their tokens for their governance to complete their work in a way that allows whoever's holding the tokens to manage the system. And this is important particularly for DeFi projects, because if you're trying to get rid of the banks, then you need to replace the guys in suits with something. And the something that you're replacing them with is the people who own the tokens. But we also think that NFT DAOs are going to be really big. We've partnered with a project called Stoner Cats, who are making a kind of cartoon series, and they use NFTs. And we've built a system that allows NFTs to be voting IDs. And so we built the systems for minting new NFTs and turning them into a DAO. And then there's all the stuff around managing your crypto economy, using decentralized exchanges, managing the treasury, and all that sort of stuff. So instead of PowerPoint and Excel, you have minting platforms and decentralized exchange management stuff. So that's what we're doing. Chris, have you got your headphones sorted? I want to introduce you to our CTO. So Chris is here.
Hey, I don't know. Is this still bad echo?
I think it might be. Yeah, I'll just not talk.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to try this again. All right. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris. I'm CTO of FVT. And we make dApps for DAOs. We build cool shit. Yeah, if you're thinking about making some cool stuff for DAOs, we've probably already done something like it. So maybe just come hang out with us. And yeah, I think you're talking about where DAO's going. I told one person, somebody was asking me about crypto, and so I said, "Oh, do you know what a DAO is?" And she's like, "Yeah." So I told them about the Constitution DAO, and it was upsetting to them. They were angry that so much money had been raised, and for something that they didn't think it was worth having. So it's interesting just how these things, these topics affect people, and it touches a nerve. Oh, $45 million to buy what? To buy a document? And the way I justified it was I said, look, really, first of all, it's their money, so they can do whatever they want with it. But then secondly, what we're doing is the Constitution for a lot of people represents this, particularly the Bill of Rights, this kind of, it's a symbol of political freedom or some kind of fair government. And it's certainly not perfect, and I don't think anyone thinks it is. But what we did was, even though we lost the we lost the auction, it's still associated in so many people's minds, crypto, with this icon of freedom. And I think that was the really important story there, is just it's a unique document. And of course, the document doesn't enforce anything. It's not like a smart contract.
Yeah, a couple of things. I like that. Yeah, if you're making DAO tools, just give up, because we've done it already. But yeah, I think it's funny that you say that so we were talking about the Constitution DAO thing just a little bit before you came up. I think it won't be the first time, or it's not the first time and won't be the last time that DAOs are going to anger people. People are going to do some ridiculous stuff with DAOs over the next year or two. There's something that happened similar to Constitution DAO. I think that the gestation of this is Pleaser DAO. So there's another DAO called Pleaser DAO, which is an NFT curation DAO. They buy NFTs. They bought the Doge meme NFT from the owner of the Doge dog and have fractionalized it and made their own dog money out of it. The token ticker is called Dog, and that now has $1 billion market cap. And Pleaser DAO a few weeks ago bought a Wu-Tang album, which there was only one made of these albums in existence. It was really cool. This Wu-Tang did this mad thing where they just made this one album. You're only allowed to listen to it in a room with like X amount of people, and it got bought by some total scumbag several years ago. Now it was the guy who was like selling HIV drugs at an insane premium on the secondary market. And anyway, the Pleaser DAO went and managed to pool their funds and then went and secured this album, which was in custody of the police. So not something easy for a DAO to do, but they did it. The DAO now owns this Wu-Tang record. And I think that what that did is trigger people's imaginations. What else can we buy? And that's where the kind of Constitution DAO thing came from. Far less successful this time round, but like you said, Chris, it's opened up people's imaginations. And what were some of the DAO ideas? We've got to this point now where we can think, okay, now we can make DAOs. Now we've got the tools to be able to spin up any kind of DAO. You can get really into this thing of, okay, what else is possible? Can you remember any of the ideas we come up with the other day, Chris?
Yeah. It just harkens back to the early days of the internet, where it was like these messaging boards or just like really simple forums where you could just find people who are interested in whatever obscure thing that you're interested in. And so now it feels like just one layer higher on the spiral staircase, but now we can co-manage resources with strangers on the internet. But those, you can use resources to do anything. We could do like a comedy club DAO, and we could have a bunch of comedians in there and use that as like a focal point to discuss comedy or share content or organize events. And so it's basically anytime if you just want people, if people want to do something together, it just creates a way where you can actually do something fun, because now you can spend money together. And so what were some of the other ones we did? There's Comedy DAO. We talked about Comic-Con DAO or something, Comic DAO. We talked about Furry DAO, I think, for all the anti-crypto furries out there. And what else did we say?
There was Comedy DAO was one specifically about you. So why would you want a comedy DAO? You can do censorship-resistant comedy on there. Comedy as a discourse is turning into a highly problematic thing at the moment. There's things you can say and you can't say. What if there was a venue where people could do comedy, vote on what was the funniest, maybe even fund some comedians, and it be censorship resistant? There's no way for anything to be taken down from it. On a similar tip, journalism DAOs, where people can publish things and not be worried about the ability for third parties to be able to take them down.
Yeah, this is super relevant right now because I think, isn't Julian Assange's, something is going on with Julian Assange's case. He's a prototypical, like, guy who, like, reported the wrong thing and made enemies so big that he got his life ruined. I think Glenn Greenwald is another one. He got half canceled because of speaking out about things he disagreed with. To me, it's such among intellectuals, if you're silencing someone, you're not proving him wrong. You're just telling everyone that you're afraid of what he might say. You're basically admitting you lost the argument. But if you've got enough guns, then maybe losing the argument isn't really that big of a problem. Getting everyone to shut the fuck up is.
Yeah, so I think the whistleblower DAO is the one that gets us cancelled. I think, yeah, some of the things. So the people will set DAOs up where it's not necessarily a good idea to do it. Almost like classic crowdfunding will work better in many instances, where you've got a group of people who are going to go and do something on the behalf of a bunch of other people. The point of a DAO is that the responsibility for the enterprise, for the free floating avatar in this room, we all reach a decision on what we want to do. We could be an organization.
Yeah, and when I think of the word organization, I think of the word organ, like organs in your body. So there's, or like departments of like different roles for or Adam Smith division of labor kind of thing. But even if do you have an organ? If you're a single-celled organelle, there's the word organelle or organism. They're all about, it's all about those organs.
What's the boundary on an organization? And I think we've got our heads into the idea that an LLC makes you an organization. A company is an organization. But so anything that has legal personhood is considered an organization. But actually, organizations were around for millennia before even the concept of an LLC or a corporate structure existed. So organizations are a group of people with a common purpose. And that's what DAOs are about, is a group of people who've all decided to do something together. And that's why we specialize in voting technology, because you've got to decide what it is you want to do if you're going to be an organization. So if everyone's holding some tokens, they might all have different ideas of stuff. You have to reach consensus on what it is you want to do, which is why we're very focused on voting technology. So yeah, I don't know if anyone else, Chris, where's your head at with DAOs? Don't know if you've got any thoughts on
Me?
Yeah.
This Chris?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I think we've covered a bit earlier, but I think Constitution DAO was incredibly helpful in terms of putting the word DAO into people's head who probably hadn't heard it before. I think it was incredibly useful that it didn't actually happen and it didn't go through, because I think that would have angered a lot of people. But I think what's ended up happening is a conversation started, which is incredibly helpful. But it also highlighted the sort of problems that finance.vote fixes, which is that once that didn't happen, I feel like DAOs at the moment are sort of quite hype centric and quite less DAOs and more let's get loads of people to collaborate again towards one single goal. And when that goal doesn't happen, then they're all standing there with their hands in their pockets, looking around a bit like that John Travolta gif, just going, well, okay, well now what should we do? And they don't have the tools to work that out and reach consensus in a way that's constructive and that doesn't necessarily sap all of the energy out of the project and leave everyone just a bit miffed with it all. Oh, hang on, my child has just walked in, probably to show me a DAO. That's brilliant, bye-bye. But yeah, I also think DAOs, for me, I was very new to the concept, like I suppose a lot of people are, and I remember you actually told me, Nick, at the beginning, you were like, DAOs are like side gigs. They're like things you can dabble in and see what works, see what fits. You can do a bit of work for one, you collaborate towards one, join a community, but they're not going to take over your main, let's say we're talking purely financially, they're not going to take over your main source of income. And with finance.vote and my experience with the DAO, I really liked finance.vote. And to be honest with you, I saw the team and were like, these are some crypto OGs. They're really smart people. They're galaxy brains. They know way more than I do. And there aren't many projects around that have these kind of teams that have just been building and not worried about shilling or marketing. They were just heads down, let's make stuff. And I didn't really understand what the project was. I knew a couple of aspects of it. And my goal was like, okay, let me just try and see if I can communicate what they're doing to people, which I tried to start doing. And then Nick reached out and said, hey, look, this is really helpful in terms of simplifying what we're doing. Do you want to do more of this stuff? And literally that's how it started. Just me ad hoc going, I really like this thing you're launching. I'm going to tell people about it. And he was like, yeah, here's a few pointers. And I was like, cool. And now not even that long, like 5 months later, maybe. And I'm now a senior DAO leader at finance.vote, make a lot of their video content, look after their new incubated NFT project. And I literally didn't know anything about any of this stuff. And I've literally learned through working and the trust they put in me to, get to the point where I am. And now I'm just like, obviously crypto is a place where you learn every 2 minutes about something. It's been an incredible sort of adventure in terms of learning about something as you build it. And I think that's the beauty of DAOs, is that you can get as involved or as little involved in anything as you want, but the sort of collection of people that you're doing it for appreciate your work and give you feedback immediately, and they inspire you to carry on. And I think that's a real sort of key thing about a DAO is you're not impressing one person, not impressing your boss like you do in your day job. You're trying to impress a group of people, and that gives you a real sort of pride in everything you do, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad you told that story, Chris. I think so. Chris was one of our community members. So we try and there's a few people hanging around in the spaces here who we essentially recruited out the community. And this is actually the hard bit about DAOs, is how do you take a bunch of randos on the internet and essentially bring them into an organizational framework and get people working and collaborating. Hardest thing about building and scaling anything is humans. Humans are tricky customers when it comes to getting everyone on message, understanding what everyone's roles are, what everyone's doing. And that just gets loads harder in DAOs because essentially they might be a green frog and you don't know the name, you don't even know where they are, and they choose to remain pseudo-anonymous. And so what you've got to do is build whole new organizational processes for dealing and making decisions with totally random people on the internet. But the potential of them is insane because when you if you take a normal organization, if you go and work for a normal organization, you tend to apply for a job, you go for an interview, and there's this kind of really structured process for being let inside an organization. And then you've got a job description that you have to follow, and then you've got a manager that makes sure you do that job description. And if you don't, you get fired. In DAOs, that just isn't the case. The doors to the organization are completely open. So you can potentially have tens of thousands of people. So there is DAOs out there with 30, 50,000 people in a Discord. If they manage to crack how to engage all those people, you can imagine what stuff they'd be able to achieve. And no one's done that yet. No one's managed to get to the point where they can coordinate massive amounts of people. But we're getting there. And so one of the things that I think you need to be able to do is reach consensus off that huge group of people, effectively assign work to people. I know Matt's in here somewhere who's focused on our kind of work distribution stuff. So these are the jobs that the DAOs needs to do. This is how you can come in and get involved. So really we're just at this very early stage where we're trying to build the framework to open the doors properly and let 10,000 people join an organization and everyone find something that they can do. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really crazy time. I might make some sort of predictions for next year. Do you want to, what do you think is going to happen next year, Evie? Have you got any predictions for next year?
It's a lot of things are changing, but I think just thinking about Julian Assange again for a moment. Julian Assange was canceled by credit card companies, by the financial corps when he got on the US's blacklist, so to speak. So he published the thing about Chelsea Manning, or from Chelsea Manning, and then suddenly the only way you could donate to them was with Bitcoin. So this was like the moment when suddenly I think Bitcoin clicked in a lot of people's heads and be like, oh, they can't turn off Bitcoin. Before you could there was like Silk Road, but this was like a kind of legitimate use case, so to speak. And I think that DAOs are going to have their moment like that sometime next year. There's going to be all these people tried to do this and it didn't work, except then they did it as a DAO and then it worked. And I don't know exactly what that's going to be. We don't have all the tech built out yet for it. Like if Discord decides to start canceling people because it disagrees with them, then a lot of DAOs are going to have to scramble to find something else. But yeah, I don't know. That would be my prediction. I think DAO is going to become the relevance of DAOs is going to come to the forefront of people's minds.
So you think there's going to be that moment where there's a payment system you can't turn off, is like the Bitcoin example, but there's an organization you can't turn off, and it's maintained a censorship-resistant state.
Exactly, yeah. So at that point is probably when some nation state somewhere is going to declare a DAO a terrorist organization, and I think yeah, and they might try to turn off the internet. They're pretty nasty critters.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. I think there's going to be. I agree with that prediction. I think it might be likely to be one of the decentralized stable coins. That's the censorship resistant DAO moment, where it's possible that some activism type DAOs might turn up, and then there's like a politically orientated movement that forms with it as a sort of framework, and they're doing things like organizing protests or doing something and funding activism activity. And the governments don't like it, but they can't stop it. That's certainly possible. I think potentially what will happen before then is like regulators will come for a stable coin and they can't stop it because it's a DAO. But yeah, absolutely believe that's probably likely to happen. Chris, have you got any predictions?
I think in terms of like just from a very broad overview, like in the way that NFTs hit this year in crypto, I think DAOs will do the same next year without a doubt. There's pretty much every NFT project I see now, if they haven't had a DAO or they're not planning to have a DAO from the off, they're retrospectively thinking now, okay, we want a DAO. That's what our community want. This is the best way to get our community involved. And NFTs are all about community, right? Like you live and die on the community you have in an NFT project. And I think being able to organize that and focus that community towards a common goal is a very difficult thing without any tools to do it, as we saw with Constitution DAO, for example. And so I think it's going to be a massive wave. I think it's going to be far bigger than Nick. I've never met anyone more bullish on DAOs than Dr. Nick. I think Nick was probably thinking about DAOs and teaching people about DAOs before crypto was a thing. But I genuinely think even beyond Nick's imagination of how this is going to go, I think it's going to be bigger than that. And I think what's really, you touched on it just then, and I mentioned it slightly earlier, but the biggest thing is people need reassurance with all of these things, right? If you're say that you're going to give up your day job and work for a DAO, there's so much unknown. There's so much of an unknown sort of quantity that it's hard to commit yourself to it. And I think what you guys I say you guys, I know I'm part of it now. What we've got at finance.vote is obviously influence.vote is our sort of decision-making tool and allows you to find signal in the noise. But bank.vote, that app for me is like the biggest one in terms of just like sort of settling any sort of nerves or doubt people have about, can I work for a DAO and get paid for it? I'll give Nick will probably explain bank.vote way better than I will, but the brief overview of bank.vote is it's a token vesting solution where you choose the vesting period. So let's say finance.vote or any DAO you work for say, right, here's what we're going to do. This bit of work that you've done for us is brilliant. We'll pay you, I don't know, 10,000 thank you coins or whatever their currency is. That goes into an account. It's not a bank. It's called bank.vote, but it isn't a bank. It's a token vesting account. And you can wait let's say it's a 6-month period and then you can grab those 10,000 tokens. That's fine. If you want to take that earlier, you'll take less of that 10,000, but you can have it right now. And what it does is stop there being like a huge impact on the token economy by everyone just taking their tokens at once. But what is really reassuring for the person who's done the work is you can see that in there. That's your account. You can see your tokens. And if you wait the 6 months, you'll get them. You can take them whenever you want. And that to me is the biggest hurdle DAOs have in terms of finding employers at the moment, because it's just unknown. It's like, well, will I get paid? Will this person actually send me my ETH after I've done it? Should I bother doing this work? And as soon as you've got that guarantee in place, I think the floodgates will open and the stuff that people will create collaboratively will be way beyond anything we're doing at the moment.
So one of the things what Chris is talking about there is an app, which is our payroll system. So if you want to expect people to turn up and do work for you, you have to pay them. And using cryptography and digital assets, you can do some absolutely insane things. And one of this is this idea of what are called Merkle Roots. And a Merkle root allows you to, in like one transaction, add any number of addresses and balances. So you can store a huge amount of data in it. So one of the things that DAOs will be able to do, and we've built the app to do this, is pay any amount of people. Like we could pay 1 billion people if we wanted to. So we can give, everyone, you need the money in the treasury, obviously, but you can pay 1,000 people, 100,000 people, 1 million people every month using crypto. And that's insane. So it means you can scale an organization to such a massively big size. Like I think there'll be DAOs that have hundreds of thousands of people working in them because the only thing stopping you from doing that is how do you pay everyone? And how do you get everyone, how do you reach decisions with all that number of people? So yeah, I think one of my predictions is I think we'll see DAO next year surprise people by how big it can get. And it'll grow bigger than any organization has ever done before because there's no recruitment process, there's no HR, there's tens, hundreds of thousands of people getting paid every month to do stuff. And that it'll surprise people by how quickly they can scale and how big they can get, which will honestly probably scare a few people. But I think that's one of the things that'll happen next year. Matt, you wanted to jump in with something?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, man.
Cool. So I've been thinking about this a lot, and actually our conversation yesterday really got me thinking about this, and I started writing a couple of articles. And the first one is on like the Overton window shifting on DAOs and what Constitution DAO has done for that. Because I think it has changed some. We're not quite sure what that is yet, but it's moved it from, if you think of the window having sort of 6 degrees separation at the very top, you've got unthinkable. And that's where most DAOs are sitting in the mind of people in crypto. People outside of crypto didn't even know about it. So it's definitely in the unthinkable part. Now it just moved into like the radical part. So what they did with the Constitution was a radical thing. And yeah, next year, then whatever will happen, something else will happen and also be radical as well. But enough of those radical things are going to happen that it's going to become an acceptable thing. And that's when we're going to get, I think, mini DAOs from 5 people in a football team all the way up to Nick says nation states style in terms of numbers of people. So I think we're on a really, and whether this is like exponential part of the curve yet, I don't know. Maybe we kick into that next year. We're probably at the bottom end of the hockey stick, and we'll go through that. But that will happen really quickly, and it could be further away than we think, or it could happen sooner than we think. It's always really hard to tell on these things. But when it does come, it's going to happen so quickly. And it's those moments where when you get in a taxi and the taxi driver's talking to you about DAOs, you're like, right, we're there. We were at DeFi Live the other day. I got into a taxi and he was telling me about his Dogecoin. And we were trying to convince him to sell it to buy Bitcoin. I don't know how well that went, but that was kind of like another one of those symbols, another one of those moments. And to something Chris said earlier on, I really believe DAOs are going to change the world. And I think Nick and I spoke about it when we first started speaking about the need for a different way to organize yourself in the 21st century that was different from the last century. And how do we make sure that we can give as many voices to as many people across the planet and have people feel that they can contribute to something, which has, I think, been the lacking thing. And it still lacks now, right? Like most people don't feel like their voice even counts whatsoever in any setting, whether that's work, political, whatever, football club. Whereas with what we're building and what's being built in general across DAOs, that's going to shift dramatically. And we don't have the social constructs to actually manage that as a thought process. Most people are used to not having their voice mean anything. So we're going to have to find new ways of talking about things. There's going to be new words that we're going to need. There's a whole new language that needs to be developed around this. It's literally the frontier. And yeah, I think, like you said, whether it's next year or sooner or later, something's going to happen big. And the world is going to change.
Yeah, I think there is that moment when like your taxi driver's in a DAO. I think this time it's like there's a taxi driver who's working in a DAO, earning some money on the side. I was outside a bar in London the other day. They were explaining to the guy what a 0 hours contract was. He said, "Do you know what a 0 hours contract is?" And he was like, "No." And he said, "Basically, it means you've got no rights." And millions of people in the UK are on 0 hours contracts. I think Chris said it earlier that I think people will start using DAOs for side gigs. I heard a crazy stat the other day that something like 4% of the American workforce have quit their jobs because they made it in crypto. And DAOs are going to broaden that out, where you still need money to put in crypto. You still need to have cash free that you're willing to risk never seeing again. And that was a huge blocker. It was certainly for me for many years. I was a relatively poor academic and I didn't have a huge amount of money to put in crypto and I had to watch it from the sidelines a lot of the time. And I know a lot of people are in that position. They don't have 10K to throw into crypto. They don't have 5K to throw into crypto. So, however, what will happen is you'll be able to work for your crypto and you'll be able to come in with absolutely nothing and be able to build up a position of crypto assets earn some network tokens from a DAO, get them into Ether, diversify a portfolio, and then be in crypto from a zero start. And I think that's one of the really exciting potential things for DAOs, that it will be able to on-ramp people who literally have no money and to get into crypto, and that's going to be absolutely huge. I just invited, there's the countess.eth. Did you want to ask a question and just invited you on?
Hi, yes, I wanted to make a comment. First of all, I think this discussion is so awesome, but I just wanted to say, because I participated in it, I'm not an expert at DAOs, so that's not where I'm coming from, but I participated in the Constitution DAO, and I just wanted to note that the issue, the whole rumor about refunds being a problem is not true. The problem and the education that needs to happen, because this is something that I just learned, is that there was immediate speculation and the coins got immediately put into liquidity. And so there was a huge problem with governance, with the team changing their mind about certain decisions, things like that. So like you guys' discussion about governance is like super relevant. Like you guys are on point with that. But there's a lot of people who are upset because they participated in separate liquidity pools for something that wasn't supposed to be for that. So I'm questioning whether tokens should be used in these situations at all, as opposed to like maybe something like NFTs. But Juicebox refunded the money smoothly. Everyone who didn't participate in a liquidity pool like Uniswap got their money back. There was absolutely no issue with refunds. The issue was that people wanted to double dip, which I understand, but the truth is that no one really got cheated. Everyone took a risk, and some people came out winners and some people didn't. I just wanted to make that note.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, I caught bits of that because I didn't actually participate in it myself. I've looked at it from a bit of an outsider thing. Yeah, I think most people who actually went into that weren't expecting that much back. It was almost like practically a sort of philanthropic exercise. The actual idea was they were going to buy the Constitution, put it in a museum. There wasn't necessarily any guarantee or promises of huge upsides from it. But you're absolutely spot on about how the tokens were managed. So there was a token called People, I think. And essentially what people got for their money was access to a fungible token. And you're absolutely right. I don't think fungible tokens are the best things to do governance with. NFTs are. So we use a fungible token that's going to essentially capture the economic bandwidth of what the DAO does. So our DAO launches DAOs, and every time we do, there's some amount of fees that happen when people use our apps that get captured by the token. But the tokens aren't used for voting. We use NFTs for voting. And specifically, we use something called quadratic voting, which means an NFT can have a budget of voting credits that they can spend on a bunch of different things. And then there was a whole mess around which was the real People token. This always happens on every token launch. So it seems like Constitution DAO brought in a load of new people to crypto who hadn't experienced the craziness of decentralized exchanges. And when we launched Arto, there was like 5 scam pools that turned up around, and we had to do our best to try and say, look, this is the real token. Don't buy the other ones. And there's just, in permissionless systems, there's a lot of scammers, and it's all a bit of a mad frenzy, and people aren't quite used to it. But yeah, I think
they're still trading on it. I'm sorry to interrupt. It's just that I find that really bizarre, and I don't want to say it's upsetting, but it's just, there's just so much misinformation that goes around, and the volatility is insane, and that wasn't what the coin was for. And it throws off all the discussions that we try to have with governance, with people complaining because they jumped into a liquidity pool and they lost their money and they're pissed off and they won't stop spamming the discussion. It throws everything off. I just was absolutely shocked at like how much we couldn't talk about because somebody lost $10,000 because they jumped into Uniswap when they didn't know what they were doing, and the coin went back up, and it's just ridiculous. Sorry.
No, you're absolutely spot on. We've experienced sort of exactly the same thing, really. So tokens bring out the worst in people at times because they go up and down. You can 10x your money in a day, but you can lose 90% of it in a day as well. And there's a lot of people who merely jump from new token to new token, have no desire to participate in the project at all, and they're just speculators, which is one of the reasons why I think NFTs make more sense in governance. And this is one of the big problems in DAOs generally. The reality of building these things in a decentralized world is, the token's still tradable because it can't be stopped. Once the token's out there, they're a permissionless system. You can't ever take them down now. It's out there. So one of the issues with Constitution DAO, I think, was the decision making around the release of the token and managing the decentralized exchange liquidity, what the governance framework was. And I think everyone just rushed into it very quickly. Everyone got a little bit overexcited. But it's really good to hear that on the whole, people aren't that worried or don't feel ripped off by the whole thing. For the most part, the people that went in originally.
Also, I think like not wanting to sound like a Dr. Nick Schiller, but like when I was saying about how early you were on DAOs and stuff, like I genuinely like it's only every couple of weeks, every 3 weeks, every 4 or 5 weeks now that basically the dApps that finance.vote have become clear in their relevance because of some. It's not even like wrongdoing; it's just because of some fault in the current system. And you go, like yield.vote would have fixed that. Oh, bank.vote would have fixed that. Oh, influence.vote would have fixed that. And it's so, it's honestly, it's quite like spooky in a way that you managed to foresee all these issues that people were going to have when DAO started becoming more prominent and started becoming a bigger sort of thing, and more money was getting poured into them, and more people were getting involved in them. It genuinely amazes me that you had that foresight. And I suppose it's more of a question for you, like Nick, because I've never asked you this question, but how much of your sort of previous background in like teaching education or teaching large corporations and working in these organizational structures and stuff, how much of that was the reason you created these tools and foresaw all of these issues, and how much of it was more you're just understanding and being within the crypto circle? Which one of those things do you think had the biggest influence in that, or are you just like a Mystic Meg?
It's an interesting question, man. I've been obsessed on crypto since about 2016. Like it's all I was an academic till 2020, but I taught cryptography in maths courses and discovered it that way, and then ended up managing large institutions with like hundreds and hundreds of people. I was an associate dean in the end. So at the same time of having to manage thousands of people who didn't want to be managed, I was watching the crypto space and all the issues that was having. So I watched the whole previous cycle, everything that went wrong in the ICO boom, everything that went wrong in the bear market when everyone started selling their tokens. So it's a kind of bit of both, really. There's major problems in both worlds. There's like managing large amounts of people in any organization is exceptionally difficult. And then when you add in money and cryptocurrency, like it almost throws petrol on the flames of all the worst things that happen in organizations. But really, for me, it was a realization that what can be achieved at scale in organizational design. So one of the things that I was working on is how do you work on collective intelligence? How do you get 1,000 people to collaborate inside an institution? And then it was a kind of realization that with blockchains, you could scale that to 1 million people. Like you could take organizational design onto the open internet. And that's just crazy. And in terms of seeing the problems, it's just the approaching the thing with a design paradigm of understanding that people generally, when money is involved and when they can be pseudonymous, can't be trusted. So if you look at most of our apps, they make a presumption that people will not behave how you want them to behave. You have to design a system where people have to behave the way you want them to behave because the system is designed like that. Like the only way to play is the way that the game was designed. And that stops people rug pulling the token and dumping their tokens on each other. But also just understanding that things like token governance don't particularly work because it just means that anyone who's a millionaire can come and break the whole system. So just trying to fix problems. In one sense, it's been quite challenging because we've solved a bunch of problems that the market didn't know were problems yet. So we've been ahead of the curve a little bit, and we're very much still underground. But thankfully, people like yourself and a few others are starting to get onto it now. actually everyone's getting very excited. It could have easily been the case that we went another 3 years before anyone give a shit about it. So we're lucky in a sense that everyone all of a sudden's getting excited about it.
It's amazing that I'm into it and it's not the Pico top. Right.
You were very early.
It's genuinely astonishing that I'm into something that hasn't caught on yet.
Yeah, that's it. And I think the thing is with crypto, everyone's looking for what's the next big thing, right? Because everyone wants to be early on the next big thing. When a next big thing happens, like it happened in the NFT space, anyone who's holding basically any NFT at the start of this year made loads of money. So everyone's always looking for the next big thing, and it becomes this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think when NFTs started to cool down, everyone's going, what's the next big thing? And the next big thing is, like, we've been working on for a long time, there's a lot of stuff done for, is DAOs. So yeah, I think there's and really what will happen is I think it'll cycle round again